Hello and welcome to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. I welcome you all to this weekly current affairs webinar. Good evening, everyone. This is Tuesday. This is 8:30 p.m. already, meaning that we are back once again to cover all the important current affairs that took place in the last week or so. As you know, in this session, we'll bring to you some of the most important news stories that were covered in the newspapers and in the different magazines, especially pick them up from the UPSC point of view and discuss this. Good evening, everyone. I hope all of you are doing it. And I also hope that all of you are also a part of our ongoing test series, the IAS 2023 test series that has already begun. This Sunday, as you know, was the first full-length test. Next Sunday, we'll have the first test of Indian polity. And I really hope all of you are prepared for that. Make sure that you attempt all these tests right on time as per the given schedule, because that will help you to ensure that your preparation is up to the mark. And we only have, as you know, about 6 months before the prelims examination on 28th of May. So before that, make sure that you solve as many tests as possible. Perfect. Let's wait for a couple of minutes quickly so that other people can also join in, and then we will begin the class. Thank you so much. Okay, okay. I was not supposed to take that, but I am getting a few questions, few comments. I'll just take that. There are a few comments in the chat that I see that I scored very less marks in the full length test. Someone commented, I only scored 50 marks, sir. What do I do? And then someone said I got some other marks, some lesser marks. So see, I'll tell you two things before we begin. Just a couple of things very quickly about these test series, the full length test that you give. Please understand this. When you're appearing for a test, as you know, we have more than 6 months remaining right now between today and the prelims examination. In these 6 months, obviously, you will study a lot more. Obviously, you will cover a lot more things. So obviously, you cannot expect that your entire preparation is already done today. So whatever marks you are getting in the full length test right now are obviously not the marks that you are going to be getting in the prelims examination, unless you're planning to just sit and waste the next 6 months, which you are not. So obviously, the next 6 months, your preparation will only improve. You will only read more topics, you will get more knowledge, and you will be able to get a much higher score. So first of all, please do not judge yourself with the very first test. Do not assume that you will be getting the similar kind of marks, because the next 6 months can change a lot of things, number one. Secondly, there is another advice I want to give you. I know it is difficult to accept that, especially when you get lesser marks, but I'll tell you a fact. Whenever you give any test, be it the first full-length test or the next test, please do remember, if you face a difficult question, if you face a question which you have not seen before, there are two ways to now interpret that question. One way is you can feel very sad, demotivated, and think, oh, I don't know anything. Where am I going? I'm not on the right track. You can start feeling bad, all those sorts of things. The other option that you have is you should be happy. Happy because, see, as many new questions as you are getting to face before the prelims examination, it is only adding to your knowledge. Please understand this. You should want to face as many new questions as possible before the prelims, so that on the day of the prelims examination, no question seems new to you. So if you already knew all the questions of full-length test, then the test was useless to you. Remember this, if you already know all the questions, then the test is of no use. The entire concept of having a test series, the entire concept of giving mock tests is to learn new things. So if you are not learning anything new, you should not give it. If you're learning something new, if you're getting to know new facts, you should be happy about it, because that is how you can be rest assured that your marks will only and only improve. So do keep that in mind. And now, without waiting any further, let's see what do we have at our head. So as I said, what we have is the weekly current affairs. So we will be discussing some of the most important news stories that we have. As I told you about our test series, it has 36 tests in total. The first 19 will be sectional tests, and then the last few tests will be full-length tests. That also includes the CSAT test as well. I really hope that all of you have already given the first test that commenced on the 6th of November. The next test is next Sunday, and that is how every weekend you will have the test coming ahead in the time till the prelims examinations actually begin. Also, as you know, these tests can be given online as well as offline, so it also gives an advantage whatever medium that you want to choose. Now let's come back. So what we have for you are these topics that were in the news somewhere on different topics. So we have not just taken current affairs from one specific topic. We have taken the news stories from a diverse range of topics, all of these pertaining to the UPSC syllabus. So we have the Black Sea Grain Initiative. So this actually was in the news because Russia actually pulled out of a grain deal. So Russia pulled out of the deal. We'll be discussing what exactly is that. As you know, Russia and Ukraine are still on war. There was an agreement signed between Russia and Ukraine where Russia had earlier agreed that whatever food grains are being exported out of Ukraine, we will not attack those ships. We will allow those ships to go. However, now they have said that no, we will not abide by that deal. So that deal has fallen out. So we'll discuss what exactly is that. What are the implications of those deals? Then we'll be discussing why Gangetic dolphins were in the news. Gangetic dolphins were in the news for a very small bit. Their population has increased slightly. So we'll be discussing what exactly is that and how is it a good news. Then we'll be discussing the doctrine of res judicata. Now, this was in the news because of an issue going on in the Supreme Court. As you know, for Indian polity, different types of doctrines given by the Supreme Court, by the High Courts are very, very relevant for the prelims examination. So we'll be discussing what exactly is that. Then we'll also discuss about the Ethiopia Tigray issue. Tigray, as you know, is actually a province of Ethiopia itself, but it is fighting against its own government. So it's a very unique issue. It's a very unique issue that has been going on for multiple years now. Issue between the central government of Ethiopia and their own province, that is Tigray. What is the issue all about? What is the present status? It is in the news because now peace talks will commence very, very soon. Then there was a news of blue flag certification. The news was that a few other beaches in India, especially in Lakshadweep, were given the blue flag certification. So we'll be discussing what exactly is that certification, what happens with that, how does it increase the prestige of the country and of that specific beach. Then we'll be discussing Mysotis. Now, Mysotis was in the news because, as you know, a very, very famous actress, and you can tell the name in the chat if you want, a very, very famous actress recently announced that she has been diagnosed with myositis. So we'll be discussing what exactly is that. Then we'll be discussing about the Amur falcons. Amur falcon, a very, very famous bird. It's a migratory bird that comes to India, specifically in Nagaland for some time. They fly from Siberia to India when the weather becomes very cold there. And then after stopping over India's Nagaland, they then go on to Africa. So we'll be discussing why exactly was that in the news. And the last thing we will discuss is the DMH11 variety of GM mustard. So GM mustard was a lot in the news in the past week or so. So all these things will be discussed in the class today. So let's not wait any further. Let's start with the very first thing that was in the news. Now, the first thing that we'll be discussing today is the Black Sea Grain Initiative. Now, as you know, the Ukraine-Russia war is still ongoing. It has been going on for a much, much longer period of time as compared to what anyone would have expected. Even Russia itself, when they started the war, they would have expected it would be a very short war. They will win very easily. But as you would have seen, none of the two sides have officially lost or won the war. Because of this, the impact of the war is not just restricted to Ukraine or Russia. The entire world somewhere is facing the impact of the war. Why? There are multiple reasons for that. First reason why it has an impact is, as you know, Russia is a major supplier of oil and natural gas. Because Russia exports a lot of oil and natural gas, meaning that when Russia's exports stop or when any sanctions are imposed on Russia, then the nations which actually are buying Russian oil, Russian natural gas will have an impact. And this is what we are seeing in Europe. You see a lot of European countries are going through an economic crisis, especially because now the winters are coming. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Because Europe had never expected the war to go so long. Europe had thought that the war will go on for a few weeks. Let us put some sanctions on Russia. Let us announce we will not buy their natural gas, and they will be pressurized and the war will end. But the war has went on and on and on. And now again the winters are here. Now, when the winters are here in Europe, this is where the problem starts. In most of the European countries, it is very, very cold. The winters are very, very harsh. So, what happens is, let me tell you, in most of the European countries, in most of their cities, they have a concept of central heating. In most of the cities, they have a concept of central heating. Now, what is central heating? So, what happens is, in every city, the government has a setup in the middle of the city where they will be using natural gas to produce steam. They will be using natural gas to actually burn that gas and produce heat of different types. They will then supply that heat energy, warm water, etc., to everyone's household. That is how they sustain in the winter. So for Europe to sustain through the winter, the long winter that they have, it is very, very important for them to produce heat energy. Now, how do they produce heat energy? They can't burn so much coal. Why? Because they have been lecturing India and China. You should not burn coal. Coal is very bad for environment. That is true. So if Europe is lecturing everyone not to burn coal, they can't start burning coal all of a sudden. They are always dependent on Russia's natural gas. And now that they put sanctions on Russia, they are not importing natural gas from Russia. So now it is coming back to harm them itself. There are other things also that are happening very, very interestingly. Recently, there was a news that what Europe is doing is, Europe does not want to tell the world that we are buying oil, we are buying gas from Russia. So what is happening is, Russia is actually giving its natural gas to China. There's a Chinese company. And China is then actually supplying it to Europe. So Europe is actually getting Russian gas only, but they are paying a higher price by actually exporting it through China. China is making a profit in between, only because Europe does not want to tell the world that we are going back on our sanctions. So in short, there's a lot of problem because of Ukraine-Russia war, and the economy of UK, economy of other European nations are going through a tough time. Then there is other reason for that. The other reason that we usually ignore is that both Ukraine and Russia are actually major grain exporters as well. Ukraine and Russia actually export grains as well. So they export grains in large, large quantities, especially Ukraine. Also, not just grains. Ukraine, in fact, also exports sunflower oil in very, very large quantity. So grain, sunflower oil, these are very, very heavy exports that actually go through from Ukraine to other nations, especially the African nations. Now, what is happening is, because Ukraine is at war with Russia, what is happening is all these shipments that were going through Ukraine, they were being attacked by Russia. As a result of which, Ukraine stopped sending grains, they stopped sending sunflower oil. Now, when such a huge exporter of grains stops sending its grain to other countries, it will have a lot of problems, obviously. Number one, the prices of food grain will increase in the international market. But if you cut down the supply, what will happen? The prices will increase. So that happened. There was food inflation. There was a lot of danger that in Africa, a lot of people will not be able to survive. Edible oil prices went up in the international market. All of that can be connected to the Ukraine-Russia war somewhere. Now, on top of that, we have this Black Sea deal. Now, what was the Black Sea deal? Nations around the world, African nations also, UN also, all of them a few months back came together, requested Russia that at least don't attack the food grains that are coming out of Ukraine. These food grains go through the Black Sea, they reach other nations such as African nations. So it was requested to Russia, please don't attack these. Russian government said, okay, we will not attack these food shipments that are going through Black Sea. So that is fine. Now, that is why, as you can see here, Russia actually allowed 9 million tons of grain in 397 ships to leave the Ukraine port, because of which the global food prices actually declined as per the UN. Everything was going fine. Everyone thought that, okay, now the situation will improve. But all of a sudden, Russia has announced we are going back on our initiative. We are going back on our deal. Now, don't expect us not to attack these ships. Why? The logic that Russia gives is that these food shipments that are actually going from Ukraine, somewhere they are helping Ukraine economically. So Ukraine is sending these grains. They are earning money in return. From that money, they are buying weapons from the West. And from those weapons, they are trying to attack Russia. So Russia says that we do not want that to happen because we think that the reason why we are losing the war, or obviously they are not saying losing, but Russia says the reason why Ukraine is still fighting the war is because they are still getting help from these shipments that we have. So they have gone back on the deal saying that no, we will not go ahead with that. Now, Russia obviously does not want to be the villain, right? If the entire world thinks that, oh, Russia has stopped food grains, Russia will be the villain in front of everyone. So Russia, along with saying we are going back on this initiative, has also announced that we will be happy to supply food grains to poor nations in Africa, even free of cost. So it's not that Russia is saying that we will let everyone die. We will not have you food. No, no, no. That's not what they're saying. They're saying you can't have Ukrainian food grains. They are saying that if you want food grains, talk to Russia. We will give you food grains without anything or without charging anything in between. So Russia has suspended this participation, as I said, in the agreement, saying that from Ukraine port also, we will now not give exemption to any ship that is going. Now, if you see this map, just to give you an idea, where are these ports which are located and why are they dangerous or why are they in danger from the Russian aggression? As you can see, this is where the ports are: Odessa, Kronomorsk, Yuzhny. These are the ports from where usually you have all the exports coming in to the Black Sea. This is Russia. This is Sea of Azov between Russia and Crimea. But as you know, Crimea now also has been annexed by Russia only. So Crimea earlier used to be the Ukrainian territory, but now this is also Russian territory only. Because this is Russian territory, so Russian can very, very easily come in and they can actually attack all these shipments. So it's a very bad news for the entire world that Russia has decided to come back on this agreement. Now, why is it, as I said earlier, that this war has resulted in the food crisis? Now, to be very true, and I am sure that you would also accept that, before the war started, most of the people around the world had no idea that Ukraine actually exports so much food grains, right? We thought, oh, food grains, they should be exported by India, maybe China, maybe Vietnam. These are the nations that produce a lot of rice. Maybe they were the ones who were exporting it. We never had in our imagination that Ukraine also is actually one of the largest exporters of food grains. So the fact is that as of June 1, 2022, if you compare the prices from Jan 2021 to June 2022, actually the prices as per the agriculture price index has increased by 40%. And there is only one reason behind all of that, that is the Ukraine-Russia war, because the supply of food grains in the international market has been curtailed. Second, maize and wheat prices have gone up by 42 and 60%. As you know, these are staple crops for most of the developing nations around the world, so they are suffering. Third, almost the global fuel, food, fertilizer, all these prices are increasing because these are somewhere connected to Ukraine and Russia. Cost of living is increasing, and about 90% of emerging nations and developing economies are facing food inflation. Inflation has actually become such a global phenomena. It is not just impacting India. It is impacting almost all nations around the world, including the developed nations, UK, US, European economy, etc. That is why you are saying US, time and time again, we are seeing the Federal Reserve, that is the American Central Bank, they are coming up and increasing their rate of interest time and time again. The reason why they're increasing their rate of interest is they want to pull out money from the market to have a control on inflation. But they are not being successful even in that. So the food crisis that we are seeing around the world is also mainly due to the war. Now, this is all that you needed to know about this topic. A practice question from this can be: United Nations' inability to resolve the Ukraine-Russia crisis can lead the world towards shortage of food supply. Elaborate. So you can have that question and you can try and write that answer. Okay, let me quickly take up a couple of questions that have been given to me. There's a question that I have. Why can't Ukraine, India take advantage of gap made by Russia in agricultural export? Okay, so I think the question is, if Ukraine, Russia are not exporting their food grains, why can't India do that? So there are a couple of things that you have to remember here. A few months back, the government of India did announce that we will be exporting wheat to many nations across the world, especially the ones who have been impacted by the non-supply from Ukraine. Now, the problem with that is that after the announcement was made, if you remember, India actually went back on that announcement. Why? Because see, because of the climatic conditions that we are facing, because of the erratic climatic condition, what Indian government saw was that our own wheat production was lesser as compared to what our expectation was. We still have a lot of wheat and rice, much more than what our population needs. But again, the expectation that we had, how much wheat, rice would be produced, the production was lesser than that. So although the Indian government announced that we will be exporting a lot more wheat this year, we did not do that because of that specifically. Also, you have to understand, India is still one of those nations that is very, very conservative when it comes to our food stocks. The Food Corporation of India always has huge amount of stockpile of rice or wheat, etc. That is a staple food. So India always wants to be conservative when it comes to that. So maybe if we do see a bumper production of wheat and rice, you might see India also going on the export path, but we did not do that because our production was less than what we expected. Then I have a question: who brokered the Black Sea Grain Initiative? That was Turkey. So Turkey is playing a very interesting role here. Turkey was the one that actually brokered this initiative. They are playing from both sides. They're talking to Russia also. They're supplying drones to Ukraine also. So Turkey is playing a very interesting role here. Turkey was the one that brokered the deal. Then I have a question. Isn't Zelensky at fault here, since he is not ready to talk to Russia until Putin is president? I don't think anyone in the world can say that in the war between Russia and Ukraine, Ukraine is at fault. Who started the war? Russia. Who is the aggressor? Russia. Who is the country which is inside the other one's territory? It is Russia. So I don't see any reason to say Zelensky is at fault. So the one who started the war, that has to be the one that actually has to be put at fault. I know our perspective has always been that Russia is a great friend. Yes, Putin has been good to India, but that doesn't mean that in this war that you can say that Zelensky is responsible. Ukraine did not start the war, so I do not think there's any merit to that Zelensky is at fault. Plus, Russia saying that we will talk, or their own conditions for talking are not the ones that are actually ideally suited. So I don't really think that Zelensky is at war. It's not that weapons have gone to its head or anything. Then I have a question: do we have a mains-based current affairs today? No. So we have a current affairs webinar. What I have for you is I will be giving you practice questions, some of them mains type and some of them prelims type as well. So I'm just giving you a mix and match of the practice question that you can expect, because these type of topics can be asked in both prelims and mains. I'll take one. I'll have a few more questions. What can be the way forward for UN, Europe, and India? See, ultimately, if Russia is the one that is the aggressor, Russia is the one that has decided to come out of the deal, there's nothing that UN can do. They have done whatever they could have done. India, on the other hand, is again doing what is in our own national interest. So I don't think that they can do anything in between. Yes, what Europe has to do is Europe has to basically make a long-term decision. If they really want the sanctions to hurt Russia, they have to ultimately take a call that we can't buy natural gas from Russia, even if it is coming from some other source. So it's Europe mostly that has to take a decision, not India, not UN, because that would not make a lot of impact. Then I have a question: why Russia, Ukraine have the best level of exporting food system? It's not that they have the best level of exporting food system. See, Ukraine, Russia, they grow a lot of rice and wheat, but they don't consume a lot of rice and wheat. As you know, in Western nations, their food patterns are not the ones that we have in India. We consume a lot of rice and wheat. That is why we don't export it a lot. In Western nations, they're more dependent on meat, poultry products, etc., protein. So they don't use it, and that's why they export it system. I already explained why Russia withdrew from the initiative, because they thought Ukraine is getting help economically, which is harming Russia. Then I have a question: why shouldn't India export oil to Europe just as China is doing? Western nations are saying that India is doing that, but Indian government is not accepting that officially. The question is just like China is exporting oil to Europe, why not India doing the same? India, as I said, Indian government is not accepting it, but there are some news reports that some private Indian companies are doing that. Then I have a question: we are also getting subsidized oil from Russia, so why wouldn't India take advantage of exporting oil to Europe? I already gave you the answer. Then I have a question. If Russia wants to give free of cost, then why this food crisis? Because not every country would want to take food grains from Russia, number one. Secondly, Russia does not have the kind of export numbers that Ukraine has. So countries in Africa don't want to come into the Russian camp. See, if you're an African country, you're getting some help from US. US will not allow you to now start taking food grains from Russia. So it's a difficult choice for every country to make. I'll take one last question. How are fertilizers and fuel connected to the war? As you know, fertilizer, the way that fertilizers are made, it is also one of the byproducts of crude oil. So fertilizer production also is connected to Russia, and fuel, as you know, is connected to Russia. They export a lot of fuel, and that is why all of these are connected somewhere to the war. Okay, perfect. So a lot of questions on the first question itself. Let's quickly move on to the second topic that we have for you today. The second topic is this, pretty smaller one as compared to the first one. The next topic, a pretty small one, is with respect to the Gangetic dolphins. Now, the reason why it is in the news, it's a good news, a positive news, is that the Gangetic dolphins, they have returned to Ganga as water quality improves. Now, there are a lot of water species, aquatic species, that actually act as indicator of water quality. Indicator of water quality means there are some species, if you see that their numbers have increased in some water bodies, that means the quality of that water body is actually improving. Similarly, this is a very, very good sign for the Ganga River. If we see the number of dolphins increase, that means it's a way forward and the water quality has improved. Now, there are different ways to interpret this. Whenever some kind of a news comes in, obviously the government of India wants to take credit. The government of India wants to say, see, all our initiatives, Namame Gange, etc., all these initiatives have actually been working so well that the water quality is improving. The oppositions or the critics of the government will say that it's nothing like that. It's because of the pandemic, because of the lockdown, we saw that the human activity, all these factors were lesser, and that is how the water quality improved. But the fact remains that this is a good indicator of water quality actually improving. Now, you need to understand and learn a few facts about Gangetic dolphins. They are one of the 5 species of river dolphins that are found across the world. The Gangetic dolphins that we are talking about, they are mainly found in the Indian subcontinent, mainly in Ganga, Brahmaputra, Meghna, and Karnafuli, Sangu river systems. Now, these river dolphins, their population is not very high in Ganga River, but even if they are seen in few numbers, it's a very, very good sign, because it also shows us that the entire food chain of the aquatic system is actually working properly. They feed on very, very diverse variety of species, including fish, invertebrates, etc. Now, there have been a lot of threats to these dolphins. Not just dolphins, a lot of different aquatic species, all of these are facing diverse threats. For example, construction of more dams, barrages, and increasing pollution. The more construction you do of dams, barrages, the problem with that is, first, you're actually making a barrier in the water body. So these big fish that actually travel long distances, the more barriers you create for them to actually travel longer distances, the more problem you create for them, and you actually reduce the chances of their population increasing. Secondly, when you create barrages, that means that there is also a chance of water siltation. There's also a chance of their path actually not being as free as it was. Thirdly, when you increase pollution, pollution is a big, big, big problem in India. See, ideally, the industries that we have which are near to the water bodies, the law is, before releasing their waste, the industries have to treat their waste. Treat their waste means that whatever waste that they're releasing, that has to be treated. All the bad things, all the pollutants have to actually go out, and only when water is remaining, that can be released into the water bodies. But that law and the implementation of that law is just not strict enough. That is why most of the industries that you see, for example, now I'm not sure how many of you are from Uttar Pradesh. places such as Kanpur. For example, if you are in Uttar Pradesh, Kanpur, you will see in Kanpur, there are a lot of manufacturing plants, leather processing plants, for example. So these leather processing plants, what they do is when they actually process leather, they have a lot of waste. Ideally, they should process that, purify that, and only after all that is done, then the water should be released in the Ganga River. But that is not the case. What happens is that because all these processes, purifying water will cost a lot of money, they just directly pour all of that into the river. That actually pollutes the river. That makes the river very, very bad. The water quality reduces, and that is why we see most of these species do not exist. Aquatic life, as I said, is an indicator of the health of the river system. Plus, having Gangetic dolphins is also a good indicator for their food chain specifically. They are usually at the top of the food chain. They are the ones who eat the smaller fish, the invertebrates, and that is why when they are at the top of the food chain, this is a good indicator that the climatic life is working well. Now, there are a lot of reasons why the government of India has actually tried to preserve them. One big reason is Gangetic dolphins have actually been recognized as National Aquatic Animal of India. The government of India has started a lot of different initiatives to protect them. For example, a very, very important noted initiative is that they are a part of the first schedule of the Indian Wildlife Protection Act. Now, I don't know how many of you actually know about the Wildlife Protection Act. There are multiple schedules in this act. Can you tell me how many schedules are there in the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972? How many schedules are there? I'm getting 5, 6, 7, 10. Okay. There are 6 schedules. So there are different schedules. Please try and understand that. There's 6 schedules. So basically what happens is, if you look at schedule number 1 to 5, what happens is in the decreasing order, some animal species have been listed, meaning that the ones that are listed in schedule number 1, they are the most important. Most important means if you actually kill them or if you harm them, then there will be the highest punishment that will be given to you. Then you come to schedule number 2. Schedule number 2 has slightly lesser punishment, and that is how it goes. So basically, the schedules that you actually see, all of these contain list of certain species that have been given protection. The lower that you come on the schedule number means the lesser is the protection that is given to them. So higher the number, that is schedule number 1, have been given the highest protection. They remain listed as endangered by the IUCN. So it is the government of India's responsibility to save them as much as possible. Now, right now, because we have just studied this topic, it's a very easy question for you to answer. But this question that you're seeing on the screen was actually asked by UPSC in the prelims examination a few years back. I think it was 2016 or 17, if I remember correctly. 17 or 18, I think, was the year when this question was asked by UPSC. Now, when this question was asked by UPSC, trust me, in that year, most of the students did not get this right. Because I'll tell you what the trend is. The trend is that once you see that the question has been asked by UPSC about Gangetic dolphins, now every newspaper will start to cover that news. And after that is asked, it becomes a very common fact that, yeah, that is the National Aquatic Animal of India. Everyone knows this. But at that time, when the question was asked by UPSC, that was not a time that we actually had a situation where everyone knew about this. So at that time, it was a very tricky question. But now that you know, it's not a tricky question. It is the Gangetic dolphins, which is the National Aquatic Animal of India. Before we go to the next topic, let me quickly take up another question that I have. Okay, the one question that I have is, as China purchases oil from Russia, then exports to Europe nations, India should also adopt the same strategy to buy wheat from Russia and then export to other nations. See, understand this. There is a difference between giving or selling oil and selling wheat. The wheat that is being sold is to African nations, some of the poorest nations in the world. So when you are selling wheat to poorest nations in the world, you can't charge a higher price for them. It is very logical. So you can't buy wheat from Russia and then increase the price and then sell it to Africa. That is not how it works, number one. Secondly, you also have to understand the people, the nation who are buying oil, European nation, they can pay a premium for that. So it's not as easy as it sounds that we should do this. China is also doing this. I have to advise you, whenever you read about any of such important news stories in international relations, please understand it is not as easy as it sounds that we should also do this. China is doing this. India is not China, full stop. So our assumption, if China is doing it, we should also do this. That is not how the world works. China may be doing it because how their international standing is, they are not concerned about that. They are not concerned if someone says that you are selling oil to Europe, taking it from Russia. They are not concerned about that. India has a different kind of an international prestige. We have a different kind of an international stature. So we can't just follow up everything that they are doing. The conditions are different. That is not how government works, that they are doing it, we should also do this. I saw someone in the chat saying that, why is India not producing sunflower oil? But everything doesn't produce everywhere that you want. If you want to produce something that is grown in Australia, can you actually grow it in India? No. If I say, why don't we have kangaroo in India? Yeah, this is so unfair. I want kangaroo. Why don't we have pandas in Delhi? I also want to play with the panda in India. We don't have pandas. Why? Because, see, they are found in different nations. As simple as that. As a UPSC aspirant, you are expected to know better. As a UPSC aspirant, you are not expected to just randomly make statement, oh, why India should also do this. Think, understand, there are reasons for everything, and then write those points, okay? So please make sure that you actually analyze before writing all these kind of statements. Perfect. So the one next topic that I want to discuss, it was a topic that did not really get a lot of coverage. It's not a very, very important topic that broke all the news, but it is still a relevant topic, especially because if you see the kind of questions that are asked in the UPSC examination, they are mostly questions from Indian polity which can be related to current affairs. So you actually see a lot of questions from different type of doctrines. So we have a doctrine of basic structure, the most famous one. Then we have different doctrines such as doctrine of colorable legislation, doctrine of pith and substance. These are different doctrines that have been pronounced by the court from time to time. Similarly, there is one more doctrine that was in the news that was called the doctrine of res judicata. Now, what is this? Why was it in the news? The Supreme Court recently said this is attracted not only in separate subsequent proceedings, but also at subsequent stages of the same proceeding. Now, what exactly is this? Try and understand this. The doctrine of res judicata is very simple. The Supreme Court says that, let's say there are two parties where they have actually gone to a court and the court has decided the matter. Please try and understand this. There are two parties which have gone to a court and the court has decided the matter. Now, the Supreme Court says because a matter has already been decided by the court, nothing new has come out. There is no new fact that has come out in the case. Everything remains the same. Then the two parties should not come back again to the same court. This is called doctrine of res judicata. Res judicata means something which is already judged. Something which is already judged. Something which is already decided, something which has already been decided by the court. The same thing should not come back if no new discovery has been made. This is what the Supreme Court has said, that just because the two parties think that no, we should go back to the same court again, that is not how it works. Res judicata means the thing has already been judged. As I said, if a competent court has decided matter between the two parties, nothing new has come up. You can't just keep on repeating the same thing time and time again going to the court, because this means you are just wasting the time of the court and you are doing nothing apart from that. The Supreme Court says that these kind of repeated applications of same case between the same two parties should not be heard by the courts time and time again, because this is just a wastage of time. Supreme Court has said that even in civil and in criminal cases, both of these things should actually be applied. If your case has been decided, then you should not actually come out with the same kind of a decision again. Now, where does it apply? It applies when the decision is final, when the decision is given on the merit, means there is nothing wrong in the decision. When the judges decided the case on its merit, the decision is final. Also, if the parties are the same and they are not the different parties, if all these things remain the same, then there is no point in bringing the case again. Now, I see a lot of questions here. The first question that all of you have is, but sir, we can appeal from High Court to Supreme Court, right? That is right. You can appeal from High Court to Supreme Court. What Supreme Court is saying is doctrine of res judicata applies here when the decision is final. When the decision is final, meaning that once the Supreme Court has given the decision, means final decision means now you can't appeal anywhere. After that, you can't just go back to Supreme Court time and time again. Please, I want to come again. Please give me something. Please, I want to actually hear the case again. You can't go back again because the case has already been decided. Making an appeal in the higher court is a different matter. But when the decision is final, the final court has given the decision, then you can't go back. Now, tell me something here. When you talk about the Supreme Court's judgment, you actually have a provision in which after the Supreme Court gives a decision, you can actually file an appeal in the court. What is that called? What is that called? Okay. So there are two petitions. There is a review petition and there is a curative petition. These are the two options that we still see, that we still have review petition, we still have curative petition. However, again, in both these cases, the court only accepts this when something new has come out. The Supreme Court does not accept review petition, curative petition in every case. Only and only if a new fact has come out in the case. Only and only if the Supreme Court feels, okay, there is merit in hearing the matter again because something new has happened, a new discovery has been made, only then these things apply. But in this case of res judicata, Supreme Court is saying if the decision is final, it was given on its merit, nothing new has happened, nothing new has come up, just that there are the same two parties, they want to come time and time again, we will not allow that to happen. This is called doctrine of res judicata. As simple as that. The reason why it is done is because, as you know, if you keep coming back time and time again, if you keep allowing people to bring back the same case on the basis of same facts to the court time and time again, what will happen is you are just wasting the time of the court and you are not doing anything else. That is why this doctrine of res judicata means that at the end of the day, you cannot expect the judiciary to time and time again hear the same case on same kind of things. Now, do remember something. Whenever you talk about these kind of doctrines, remember, since you are not preparing for the law examination, please try and listen to what I'm saying. Since you are not preparing for the law examinations, please understand the questions that you will be asked on doctrines will never be in a lot of detail. Because going into a lot of details of every doctrine, how, why, where, what are the exceptions, those are the things that law students have to read. If you have law optional, maybe if you are preparing for a law examination, then you have to go into a lot more detail of it. If you are not from law optional background, if you have not been preparing for a law subject, then I would suggest you don't have to go a lot of detail into all these kind of doctrines. As long as you understand it on the basic issue, what is this? How does it work? That should be good enough. So as I said, doctrine of res judicata lies on the concept that you can't make the court hear the same matter time and time again without any new fact coming up in that particular case, because you can't waste the time of the court. Let's see if you can see or if you can solve this question. Let me give you a poll, although it's a very simple question. We have already discussed this. Read this and your time has started. Oh, I think by mistake I gave a 30-second counter. I wanted to give a 15-second counter actually. %76% people are correct. I don't know why the other 24% people did not get it. We just discussed this. The thing that has already been judged, that is the interpretation of res judicata, simply speaking. Next is a topic from international relations, Ethiopia Tigray issue. Before we go there, let me quickly take a few questions. I see whatever we have discussed, the questions are still coming in from Europe, Russia only. Okay. One question I have, why can't we sell wheat to Europe instead of Africa? But just because you want to sell wheat to Europe, why would Europe buy wheat, yaar? Just because we want to sell wheat to Europe doesn't mean Europe will buy the wheat. You can't sell anything that you want anywhere. As I said, please be slightly more logical. You can't sell anything everywhere. Why can't we sell wheat to Europe? Baba, they don't want it, as simple as that. If they would have wanted, they would have gotten wheat from many other places. Then I have a question. Not exporting food to other nations, it is also a big problem to both Ukraine and Russia. See, obviously, the entire war that is going on, it is obviously a big pressure, a big load on both Ukraine and Russia. Russia has a problem because it earns most of its money from giving out oil and natural gas. Now, you can say Russia is still supplying oil and natural gas because oil and gas are things which everyone requires. So if Europe will not buy it, someone else will buy it. But if you actually think from Russian point of view for once, from Russian point of view also, it is not easy. See, they are selling oil to India at a cheaper price. So they also are making lesser profit than what they should have ideally. So if Russia is selling oil to India, even they are hurting. It is hurting them also. They could have sold at a higher price, so they could have made more profit. So Russia is still hurting. Ukraine, on the other hand, obviously their economy has crashed. They are not able to do anything. The only reason why they are able to sustain is that Ukraine is still getting a lot of support from the Western nations, from Western European nations, from US. So both the nations, yes, are hurting very badly. The difference being that while Europe is getting external help, Russia is not getting an external help as such. They are still making do with whatever money that they are earning from oil, gas, weapons, etc. Then I have a question, but sometimes the decisions can be inadequate. What about that? See, in your view, if you find a decision inadequate, that is not the court's problem. If the court thinks, the judges think that the decision has been made on the merit, that is it. Every decision, and someone will find a decision inadequate only. That doesn't mean that something has to be done about that, right? Then I have a question. But Russia is also correct at its place. Why someone want that his big enemy come near him? Ukraine have to understand if he joined NATO, it would be difficult for Russia. Why Ukraine didn't accept what Russia want? I am not sure why or how can you even justify someone waging a war, killing thousands of people. It should end there itself. Yes, you are not happy with what some third country is doing. You can think of it from that point of view. For example, China would not want India to go on a military alliance with USA because China would not want that USA should come near India's border. So doesn't mean it is justified for China to attack India. Is that your logic? If India joins, let's say, NATO tomorrow, or India joins some other group with US, China is obviously unhappy about it. Then you will justify China. What can China do? They have to attack now. India should have understood. You can't do that. It's a sovereign nation. The sovereign nations take their decisions on the basis of what they think is right, not on the basis of the other things. I don't know why you are thinking that something can justify killing thousands and lakhs of people. Yes, Russia has been good to India, but then you can't judge a country on the basis solely of that. If someone is good to you and then killing thousands of other people doesn't mean that they're good everywhere. Understand that, right? So it's a very weird way of thinking, but okay, I don't know. Then I have one more question. Ukraine-Russia topic is just not ending. Okay, let me see one more question. Isn't increasing trade through water, like Government of India projects for national waterway, which one side should be cheaper transportation method and also reduce pollution compared to other transportation, but at the other side, it would disturb aquatic animals like Gangetic dolphins? What should be the policy of Government of India so that we could be able to balance them? Okay. See, obviously, whenever a nation has to decide such a policy, they would obviously have to take a decision wherein they have to compromise on the situation. See, ideally, if you are saying if we should not harm the environment, the ideal way to not harm the environment at all is everyone should sit at home, switch off everything, wake up, sleep, wake up, read a book, then go to sleep. That is how we will not harm the environment. So ultimately, if you are living your life, that means you will have to harm the environment. That is how the nature works. Now it's a decision that you have to take, which is the best possible way to go forward at the end of the day. Because if you are aiming for a world where nothing is harmed, there is no pollution, then you should not even move. Because even while you are cycling, you are saying I'm not harming the environment, but cycle is made up of metal. Those metals in their manufacturing would have harmed the environment. So it's not an end where you say that government has to ensure zero pollution. They have to take a calculated step. So if they are choosing to develop national waterways and they think that that will reduce pollution much more as compared to other things, that is the way forward that they have decided. So it can't be a compromise. That dolphins can't be told that this is your area, this is our area, don't come here. So it has to be a balance that has to be made by the nature itself. Then I have a question. Then the cases will not be shifted to constitutional benches if single judge bench gives a verdict on any constitutional case. I am not sure you understand how cases are shifted to constitutional benches. Cases are shifted to constitutional benches when from two judge benches there is a tie of 1-1. Like if you're referring to hijab issue, that was a 1-1 tie. That is how it will go to higher bench. If it would have been decided by the lower bench, then yes, it would not have gone. Simple. Yes, res judicata in this case will be applicable to Supreme Court because that from after their appeal will not lie. Simple. Okay. Perfect. Now, the next topic is from international relations. That is Ethiopia-Tigray issue. Now, what is Ethiopia-Tigray issue? It's a very, very interesting issue. And it has a lot of history attached to it. Now, we don't have time to go into a very long history lecture, but let's try and understand what is this issue and what is it that is actually happening in Ethiopia. Now, before going into Ethiopia-Tigray issue, just a bit of background. See, Tigray is actually nothing but it's a region of Ethiopia. Where is my pen? Yeah. So Tigray is actually a region in Ethiopia. Now, to understand this, you have to understand a bit of history of Africa. See, India and most other neighbors that we have in India, be it Sri Lanka, you talk about Myanmar, you talk about these nations that we have in our neighborhood, most of these were ruled by the British. On the other hand, if you go to Africa, in Africa, there was French that ruled most of the part of Africa, and then there were some other nations as well, but mostly they were French, they were British in some territories, etc. Now, the one problem that happened with Africa was because they were British, French, and all these colonial powers in Africa, they were mainly there for their mineral resources. They found a lot of gold, diamonds, etc. in Africa, and they found some other resources as well. So that was a main attraction for them. Now, what these colonial powers did in Africa was they actually artificially redrew the boundaries in Africa. So Africa has a lot of artificial boundaries. Now, what do I mean by artificial boundaries? Let's try and understand this. What do you mean by artificial boundaries and how does it actually work? Please try and understand. See, when you talk about artificial boundaries, let's say that before the colonial powers came in, let's say this is an area of Africa where tribe number 1 lived. So there are different tribes in Africa. Let's say tribe number 1 lived here peacefully. Then let's say we had this area where tribe number 2 used to live. Tribe number 3 lived here. Tribe 4 lived here. Tribe 5 lived here. 6 lived here. Something like that. Okay? Something like that actually happened. Now, let's imagine that the British come here. Okay? And British all of a sudden find that in this area, British find that in this area, there is a lot of mineral resources. Okay, this area. Let me share a different pen. So British think in this area, there are a lot of mineral resources. So let us capture this area only. So what the British did, what the French did was, let us capture this area and call it a new country altogether. Because now we have captured it. Let us now make it a new country. Now, what happened with this kind of arrangement? When these kind of new countries were formed, in this new country, what will happen? Earlier, the tribes were living in their own region, happy, peaceful, no problem. Now, when you have a new country artificially made, what will happen? In this country, we will have tribe number one. Sorry. In this country, we'll have tribe number one, which will be in minority. There will be tribe number three that will again be in minority. There will be tribe number four that will be again in minority. Sorry, tribe number two again in minority, and tribe number four will be in majority. So a new country is formed all of a sudden, and this new country that has been formed, it has been formed in such a way that some areas have been taken. Now, in this new country, what will happen? They will have a lot of diverse tribes. Diverse tribes means having a very diverse culture, very different way of living, different languages, different way of dealing with problems, different rituals, etc. Now what happened? Because earlier they were all under the control of British, French, etc. They were all living peacefully. As soon as they became independent, all of a sudden these tribes then started to fight amongst each other because they were not used to living together. Now you can say India, sir, also has so many tribes, India also has so many culture, but that is not a problem in India. But you have to understand the history is very different. In India, India has always been a very diverse society. So in our past, our population has always been used to living together in a very diverse culture. In Africa, when the boundaries are artificially created, historically these tribes were not used to living together, but they were forced to live together. Now, as a result, what happened? These tribes, when we actually have these tribes put in together, this is where the problem now starts. Now, in this problem, the tribes start to fight with each other. One tribe doesn't believe the other tribe, whichever is the majority, they are the ones who come to power. The prime minister, presidents are from those tribes only. The other people start fighting against this. This is a story in most of the African nations. In Ethiopia, it is the same story. So basically, Tigray is a region which has a different tribe. The Tigray people are called Tigrayrian. Tigrayrian is a tribe in Ethiopia. And I'll just show you a map so that you can actually understand. So if you actually see, this is the map. This is Ethiopia. Somewhere here on the north, this region, please understand this region somewhere, this is the Tigray region. Somewhere this is the Tigray region. So Tigray region is towards the north part, one of the northmost provinces of Ethiopia. So it's a province in Ethiopia itself. Now Ethiopia is one of those countries which have multiple tribes. Now Ethiopia historically, please look at the map. Historically, Ethiopia has had a border dispute with Eritrea. So Ethiopia and Eritrea this is Eritrea, as you can see. They have had a border dispute for a very long time. So they had a border dispute for a long time. However, in 2018, they were able to resolve that issue. So Ethiopia, Eritrea, 2018, starting from there, the issue got resolved. The border issue resolved. However, this Tigray tribe here that is living in north part of Ethiopia, they are very angry with their own government. They are fighting against their government. Why? Because they are saying the government wants to kill us. It is very similar to the civil war that we used to have in Sri Lanka. In the Sri Lanka civil war, what happened? The Sri Lankan government, the Sri Lankan army itself was actually killing the Tamil population, remember? Similarly, over here, the Tigray population is saying that Ethiopia's own government is killing the Tigray community. Why? Because they think the community, the tribe does not belong here and we should go away. Now, there's a very interesting history. In 2018, Ethiopia had a new prime minister, Abiy Ahmed. Now, I don't know if you have heard of him or not, but he became very famous. He became very famous. Why? Because he was the one who resolved this Ethiopia-Eritrea border issue. This border issue was going on for a very long time. But he was able to resolve the border issue between Ethiopia and Eritrea. For that, he actually got the Nobel Peace Prize in 2019. So much so it was such a big conflict that he was given the Nobel Peace Prize, that he was able to resolve this dispute between Eritrea and Ethiopia. So everyone thought he's such a great leader. But very similar to what has happened in Myanmar. Now, in Myanmar, what has happened? In Myanmar, when you actually talk about the Myanmar leader, Aung Suu Kyi is also being criticized. Why? Because she was seen as this leader throughout the world that has been regarded as a symbol of peace. And then there were allegations that she was the one that did not give any order when her army was actually killing the Rohingyas. She kept quiet. Similar is the case here. In 2019, Prime Minister of Ethiopia got the Nobel Peace Prize in 2019. However, there were allegations that he actually has asked his own party leaders, has his own military officials to go and attack the Tigray community. So despite getting the Nobel Peace Prize for resolving border dispute between Ethiopia and Eritrea, he was accused that he is asking his own army officials to now attack the Tigray community, attack the Tigray people. Now the problem starts and it becomes very interesting. Now the Tigray community started fighting against the government. Okay. Now when they started fighting, they tried to see how can we attack the government. They started fighting against the government forces. They attacked their own military. Now when they attacked their own military, something very interesting happened. Why? This Tigray community, they got hold of certain rockets and certain small missiles, and they were actually firing missiles. And some of the missiles even went to Eritrea as well. So again, I'll draw the map here. If this is Ethiopia, this is Tigray, this is Eritrea. So this Tigray population actually, when they had to fight against their own government, some of their missiles actually went to Eritrea itself. Some of their missiles went to Eritrea also. So Eritrea also got very angry. They said that, why are you dragging us in this issue? This is not our issue. You go and fight against your own government. Don't talk to us. So now what is happening? The latest turn of events is because both the governments, Eritrea and Ethiopia, both are very angry with Tigray. So what happened was in the past 2 years, we have seen that actually Ethiopia and Eritrea are actually, they have combined to fight against Tigray. So this Tigray province is not just fighting against Ethiopia now. They're actually fighting against Ethiopia plus Eritrea, because Eritrea thought that they are harming us also. So meaning that Ethiopia and Eritrea, which had their own border dispute earlier, they have come together because they are saying we have a common enemy. Because we have a common enemy, Tigray, let us come together to actually solve this issue with Tigray. So this is what has actually transpired. In the last 2 years, we have two proper sovereign governments, Eritrea and Ethiopia, coming together to fight against Tigray. Tigray is a small province inside of Ethiopia. So this is the issue that has actually come up again. Now, this conflict that is going on between Tigray and these two governments, this has actually worried their neighborhood as well. Why? Because of various reasons. The first reason why they are worried is, see, if Tigray has missiles that can enter Eritrea as well. So obviously neighboring nations will be worried. A neighboring nation will think, if a missile can go to Eritrea, they can come to us as well. See the neighborhood here. There is Somalia here, there is Djibouti here, there is Kenya here. So there are nations over here which are worried because this issue can come to them as well, and they don't want that to happen. They are saying that it's an internal issue and you should resolve those issues with you. Secondly, there is a big project coming up on the Blue Nile River, that is a Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, which will be Africa's largest hydroelectric dam. Now, these kind of big developments will only come up when there is peace in the region. Why? See, when these kind of issues actually happen, when such big development, such big infrastructure actually has to settle or has to be built, they want proper peace in the region, because these kind of infrastructure can be harmed very easily by these elements which don't want development. So that project is also getting delayed. There's a global impact. WHO president has also said that the Ethiopian conflict is not going ahead well. Okay, let me ask you this question. Why is it that WHO president is condemning this? What has WHO got to do with this? Shouldn't the UN actually condemn this? What do you think? Why is it that WHO president is saying that, oh, whatever happening in Ethiopia is bad? Okay, there are some people who have given a correct answer. He is, so WHO president, Dr. Tedros, is from Ethiopia itself. Dr. Tedros, who is the WHO head, he is actually from Ethiopia itself. That is why he is concerned about that. Otherwise, you would not see WHO actually making statements like these. UN usually will make the statement, not WHO, but because he belongs to Ethiopia, so he's making those statements. Now, impact on India also, there's no direct impact as such that we are seeing. But Africa is that region of the world where India has been very interested in making sure that our investments are safe, in actually making more investment, because that is a part of the world which is still relatively unexplored. That is also a part of the world where China is making a lot of inroads very, very quickly. So India actually wants to ensure that there is peace and stability in the region as well. India has also done certain work, certain infrastructure set up in Ethiopia. So we want that to actually be settled down. Now, the good news is, as I said, there is a peace proposal that has come up between the two sides, Tigray and Ethiopia. That is why it is in the news. That is why we're reading about it, that now the peace talks will happen between the two sides. Whether or not that peace talks will be successful or not, that remains to be seen. Let me ask you one quick question. You tell me in the chat, these peace talks, these negotiations will happen in which country exactly? Can you tell me? These peace talks will happen in which country exactly? No, not USA, not India. Obviously not India. Why would India be anywhere then? Not India. Still not getting a correct answer. Okay, Nazla has given a correct answer. Okay, South Africa. South Africa. So basically South Africa is the one that will actually come up here. So South Africa is the one that will come up. South Africa is the one that has been chosen as the venue for these peace talks to go on. And let's see what happens with these peace talks. So as I said, this is the first time that the formal peace talks will be happening. There will be African Union members. African Union is the group which has all the African nations as the members. They will be playing the mediator role between Ethiopia and Tigray. So what Tigray wants, they now essentially want to be a different country altogether. They are saying that we want to be a separate country. We don't trust Ethiopia. Ethiopia or no country would want to give up any of its area. So obviously Ethiopia does not want to give up its territory, but Tigray wants to have a new territory or a new country altogether now. Let's see if you can answer this very simple question. I'll give you only 15 seconds for this one. Okay, 80% people got the answer correct. I'm not sure why 20% people did not. We just discussed it is in Ethiopia. Ethiopia is building, just look at the name, man. Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. This is being built here, one of the largest dams that is ever being built in Ethiopia. Now, the next topic, it's a very small fact-based news that came up. That is about the Blue Flag certification. Let me quickly take up if I have any questions, and then we'll go up. Okay. Then I have another question. Okay, I'll combine a couple of questions. There are 3 questions. I'll combine all of them because they're very similar. One question is who supplied the missiles to Tigray? One question is why did UAE supply Tigray with the missiles against the Ethiopian government? And the third question is why Tigray got missiles when it is only just a community having missiles? Rights should be with Ethiopia. Okay. Let me just quickly combine all of them. See, whenever you say that, why is it that Tigray as a community, a very small community, has got missiles? So I'll just tell you one thing. First of all, I'll just take you back here. Just because I have drawn this such a small community of Tigray doesn't mean that they're so small. Doesn't mean that they're so small. Okay, if I remember correctly, I think they are the fifth largest province of Ethiopia, fifth or sixth, if I remember correctly. So they are not so small as such. Okay, they are not so small. They are big. They have a good population. They have a good infrastructure. They have their own good economy. It's not that they are very very small. I think they're fifth largest, if I remember correctly. Second thing over here, see, with any country, they have, every country has different types of powers. Some countries are powerful because they have natural resources. Like you say Saudi Arabia is a very powerful country, you will say UAE is a powerful country, Qatar is a powerful country. Why? Nothing, just because of the natural resources that they have, oil, gas, etc. Okay, then you will see, you will say some other country is also very powerful. Let's say USA is very powerful, China is very powerful. Why? On the basis of market, economy. This is one other parameter, how you say a country is very, very powerful. Then you have some other countries which are powerful because they're very rich, they have a lot of money, Luxembourg, etc. Then there are some countries which are very powerful because of their strategic location. Some countries are very important because of their strategic location. This is where Tigray comes into the picture. Their location here at the Horn of Africa makes them extremely, extremely strategic. Also, this is why in Djibouti, China has such a huge military base. Outside China, their largest military base is in Djibouti. They have invested a lot of money there because they want to have a presence there on the Horn of Africa. Similarly, other nations, whoever wants, they are also seeing that if we can maybe help Tigray, help them in such a way that they carve out a new country for themselves, then maybe we can have so much influence in that country that we can also have that kind of a port which China has in Djibouti. So there are a lot of international situations that are playing here. Then I have one more question. Why UN is not interfering in Tigray dispute? You tell me, what will UN do while interfering? Give me example of one dispute where UN has interfered and everything good has happened. There are zero examples. So what will UN do with interfering? Why did they not interfere in Ukraine, Russia? Why did they not interfere in any other matter that we have? So their interference has never had any positive impact. So I am not sure if their impact would actually, or their interference would actually have any impact whatsoever. Perfect. The next topic from current affairs, it's a very short current affair that we have. A good news of sorts for India, that is, 2 more Indian beaches have been given the prestigious Blue Flag certification. Now, what exactly is this? It's very, very simple. It's a kind of a certificate. It's a kind of I would say, achievement given to certain beaches. Beaches which are very clean, beaches which are very pristine, beaches which are very good, basically. The beaches which you can actually go, the water quality is great, there is no pollution, you can actually spend a lot of time there. Those are the beaches that are given the Blue Flag certification. Now, how does it matter? Does the government get money from it? No. Does the beach get a lot of money from it? No. So how does it matter? How it matters is that these kind of things actually make sure that maybe in the coming years it becomes more of a tourist attraction. So these are more of things that actually ensure that in the long run you might have more interest from people coming in. So in the long run you might earn money from that, you might have economic advantages out of that. That is how it happens. So these 2 beaches that have been given certification are in Lakshadweep. There are other beaches also in India that have already been given the certification, but this one, these 2 beaches that we have that have been given the certification are in Lakshadweep. I'll tell you the name also, so don't worry about that. Now, who gives this certification? Not the UN. It is nothing like an international body. So basically, it's a kind of a foundation which is called FEE. It is called Foundation for Environment Education, FEE. So it's an NGO, non-government organization. They don't have connection with the government, but they are famous because they are the ones that prepare a lot of reports about beaches, the quality of beaches, environmental pollution near water bodies, etc. They are the ones who have given this certification. They also give this label if their very, very strict criteria are maintained. So I'll tell you their criteria also. They give very, sorry, this is not a practice question. I don't know why this heading is there. Not a practice question. So they only give this certification if their criteria has been met. Also, as I said, this is one of the most sought after voluntary awards given to beaches, marinas, and boating tourism, because it has been seen that everywhere around the world, whichever beaches are given this certification, they have seen more influx of tourists in the coming years. So it may be expected that when these beaches also get these kind of certification in the long run, we might see more people coming in. Now, as I said, this is a good news for India, because in the sense it also shows Indian government's commitment towards having more tourism in India, towards cleaning beaches, towards having a better environment. Who are these two beaches? Which are these two beaches which have been given certification? First is called the Thundi beach. This is Thundi beach, which is, again, as I said, one of the most beautiful beaches in Lakshadweep that you will see. And the second beach that has been given this certification is called Kadmat beach. So these are the two beaches that have been chosen in Lakshadweep. These are not the first two. Even before that, we have had beaches in India that have been given this certification. These are very popular with the cruise tourists who come here for water sports, Blue Lagoon, etc. Has anyone ever had a chance to be in Lakshadweep here? I have not been to Lakshadweep. I've been to Andaman Nicobar, but I've not been to Lakshadweep. I'm not sure if any one of you, because somehow, I don't know why, somehow, those who are saying rather, okay, somehow, I don't know why, but in the list of tourist places that we want to visit, somehow Lakshadweep doesn't come up. I don't know why. Because whenever we talk about beaches, we maybe talk about Goa, and then if you want to go to other side, you talk about Andaman Nicobar. But usually Lakshadweep doesn't come up. But it's a very, very, very fine place. Some of my friends have gone there. So if you have been there, I hope that you actually go. Perfect. So let's come back. So if you actually go to Lakshadweep, as I said, there are two beaches on Lakshadweep that have been given this certification, called the Thundi and the Kadmat beach. Both have qualified under the criteria that have been set up by this foundation. Now, this foundation, the criteria that they have set up, under which they actually give this certification, there are total of 33 criteria, 33. I am sure you can't remember the 33 criteria, so I will tell you the 4 categories. So all their criteria are divided into 4 categories. If you count all of them, there are 33 criteria. Which are these 4 categories? Environmental education and information. Second, bathing water quality. Third, environmental management and conservation. And fourth, safety services on the beaches. These are the 4 categories. Inside of them, if you count all, there are 33 in total. Now, as I said, this initiative is not through a government body. It is through a foundation, which is a non-government organization. It was launched in 1987, first in Europe. And since then, every year, some certificate is given out. It is given to over 5,000 beaches so far. It is given to over 5,000 beaches. I'll give you a list of Indian beaches also. These are some of India's blue flag beaches. If you actually see. So these are the beaches. There is in Gujarat, Diu. Then we have Uttar Karnataka, Kerala, Andhra Pradesh, Odisha, Radhanagar. So I've been to Radhanagar in Andaman Nicobar Islands, so I can tell you that. There is Kovalam, Tamil Nadu. There is Eden in Puducherry beaches. These are some of the beaches. I think I've been here also, right? Out of these, if I actually see, I have covered 2 only. So these are the different beaches which have been given blue flag certification in India. Okay. Those who are asking how to remember this fact, remember by reading it multiple times. I have not prepared any shortcut for this. If you have actually, I don't know, maybe if you are able to remember this, you can share a trick with others, but I have not gotten this. Perfect. Anyway, let's see if you can solve this practice question. Read this very carefully. Those who are saying the beaches are in some, so the long beaches, not the entire beach would get the certification. It is only that part which has met that criteria. Read this very carefully. I'll give you more time for this one. Your time has started. And the time is up. 45% people got this correct. This is actually D. None of these. So the question was, which of this is not a category? We just discussed all these are actually the 4 categories. If you count all of these, there are total of 33 parameters which are divided into these 4 categories. That is environmental education information, the bathing water quality, then the environmental management and conservation and safety services in the beaches. These are the ones that have been given here. Perfect. Then the topic that all you movie fans were waiting for, myositis, the next topic, as we discussed in the beginning. A famous actress has been diagnosed with this. That is why it came in the news. That is why we'll be discussing this. Not a disease that is spread across the entire country, nothing like that. Not a disease that the entire world is facing. Just that there is a famous actress, which many of you would know, has been diagnosed with this. So we want to discuss this. Let me quickly see if I have a question. Quickly from the last one. Okay, I don't see a question from the last topic. Perfect. So as you can see, Samantha Ruth Prabhu, she is the one who has opened up. She's a very famous actress. In movies also, if you have not seen movies, if you have maybe seen Family Man season 2, you would have seen her there. So she has recently disclosed that she is suffering from a disease called myositis. So it gives us a chance to look into what this disease is, because it was in the news. What are the symptoms? Is it very bad? How does it work? So it's not as I said, it is not a disease that is actually spreading across the entire world or country. Nothing like that. Why it is important is it is an autoimmune condition. Now, what is an autoimmune condition? See, autoimmune condition in very simple terms means a condition where your own immunity system starts to attack you. This is called an autoimmune condition. Meaning that where your own immunity system of the body is not able to differentiate between the good parts of your body and the bad parts of your body. So when your own autoimmune system or your own immunity system, which is supposed to protect you, it is not being able to differentiate what is an outside element in your body against which it has to fight and which is the element which is not harmful, that is called an autoimmune disease. So there are different types of autoimmune diseases where your immunity system starts to attack you. One of them is called myositis, and this is the one that is in the news. So it's a very rare condition. The condition is that your muscles actually become weak, painful, and you feel a lot tired. In the word myositis, myo means muscle, and itis means inflammation. So when your muscles are inflamed, when they're swollen, when they are power support that you require to go through your day-to-day activities, that is when you say you have myositis. Now, it is usually, as I said, a problem which is related to your immune system, where it mistakenly attacks a healthy tissue. These are a definition of any autoimmune disease. Whenever you see the word autoimmune, just understand the entire meaning of the word autoimmune is when your entire immunity system starts to attack your own healthy tissue rather than actually attacking any foreign element. So it is usually not very common. There are 4 to 22 cases per 1 lakh of the population. It can affect both children and adults. And the other part is that women are more likely to be affected by this disease as compared to men. Those who are asking how immunity system attacks the body, that is the entire definition of autoimmune disease. That is what the doctors are trying to find out, why is it doing it. So when your body is attacked from inside rather than any germs from outside, that is the entire problem. So if I would have been a doctor, I would have told you how it happens, but I'm not a doctor. So I can't tell you how that happens, but it does happen, sadly. There are different types of these diseases. Myositis, there is dermatomyositis, that is related to your skin specifically. There is inclusion body myositis, there is juvenile myositis. Juvenile means the one that actually affects children. Then there is polymyositis, where it affects different parts of your body, and there is toxic myositis. General systems, the symptoms are the same. There will be muscle pain, there will be soreness, and there will be fatigue and trouble in swallowing things, difficulty in breathing. Basically, your day-to-day activities will be affected, and you will not be able to go through your day-to-day activities. There is no one practical medical treatment that is available, but again, if you want to believe the Instagram post of the actress, she has said that the doctors are confident she will make a full recovery. So if you believe her Instagram post and then she believes her doctors, so in that chain of belief, if we are the fourth person, so let us also believe that yes, this disease also has a cure. But on a more serious note, there is no specific cure that is mentioned for this disease so far. It is only about treating the symptom. So when you can't treat the source of the disease, when you don't know how it starts, how it has to end, you treat the symptom. Means if you have pain, then give painkillers. If you have fever, give those kind of medicines. If you have some swallowing, then if you are having difficulty in swallowing, then you give medicines for that. If you have some swelling, then try to reduce swelling. So you're trying to treat the symptoms in these kind of diseases. Also, physical therapy, yoga, stretching also is recommended in these kind of diseases. So this is how it usually works. So, sorry, these are the only details about this disease available in the public domain. If you want to know more about this, you can go to medical expert websites like maybe WebMD to know more. But if you're asking me, why is it that it is only affecting women? There is no general information available about that. Either I can make up a story about that, which I would not want to, or either I would have to say the truth that I don't know, neither do general science. Anyway, let's quickly try and answer this question. Read this carefully. I've started your poll. Okay, and your time is up. 82% people got it correct. This is C. 1 and 3 are correct. Easy question we just discussed. It can affect both adults and children as well. First and the third statements are correct. The symptoms usually include muscle pain, soreness in the muscles, fatigue, etc. And usually it impacts women more, which most of you are concerned with, as you're asking me in the chat. But as I said, generally there's no reason available why does it affect the women more as compared to men. So I'm sorry about that. Perfect. We have two more topics to go quickly. The next topic is about Amur falcons. Now, although the topic is Amur falcons, but the interesting part is if you see the news that was covered by the Hindu newspaper, which is why we are covering this, the news was not about Amur falcons. The news was that Nagaland is famous for Amur falcons. So Amur falcons are these migratory birds that actually migrate from Siberia when the winter sets in, when the weather is very, very, very extreme in Siberia. They make a move from there, they come to India, they stay in Nagaland for some time, and then they basically move towards Africa. So Nagaland has long been regarded as the Amur falcon capital of the entire world, where a lot of these Amur falcons are seen. So what has happened is in the news now, Nagaland is actually, the government is thinking, because Amur falcons, they come to Nagaland in such big numbers, they have actually become a tourist attraction. So a lot of people come to Nagaland during this part of the year, especially to see the Amur falcons in Nagaland. So what the government is now saying is, let us do a study, let us do a census, maybe some other interesting birds also come in our state. Maybe if some other birds also come, maybe we can promote that as well. We can earn or we can attract more people to our state. So this is the news, that after Amur falcons, now they are also trying to see if we have other birds also coming in here. So they had a 4-day exercise. In this 4-day exercise, they actually appointed many government officials just to keep a track of the different varieties of birds, keep a record of them, see how many of them are coming to Nagaland, see their different varieties, and see if we can actually make a proper study of them. So, as I said, Nagaland is a very, very interesting destination, especially because they are the ones who have been actually homes to Amur falcons, which is a migratory raptor, which comes in the state every single year. They come mainly from Siberia. They come from Siberia because the weather, the climatic conditions are very, very extreme when the winter sets in, and that is why they want to go to warmer places for some time. So they come to Nagaland, stay for some time, and then they go ahead to other parts of Africa. I'll just show you the route here. So if you can see this, this is the route that they take. And those who are asking what is Amur falcon? Amur falcon are these birds. They are the ones. These are the birds that you have. So they basically start from Siberia. They actually come in here, and this is where basically in Nagaland they have a stay over, and then they go to South Africa. Now, if you see this, this is such a long route that they are taking. Imagine from Siberia, then coming to India, then going to South Africa. It's such a huge route that they are taking. It is not easy, or it is not possible for all kind of birds to actually cover such a huge route. Only few birds are actually capable of this. In fact, the Amur falcons that we have are long renowned as the birds which have the longest migration route, which can go up to 20,000 kilometers in a year. Just imagine, 20,000 kilometers in a year. This is how long these routes actually are. Those who are asking what is raptor, so basically there are different types of birds that we have. Raptors, and the word that you actually see here, raptors. Raptors are those kind of birds that can actually hunt small animals, like eagles, etc. They hunt small animals. Like they come down on the land, they take a small animal, they basically clutch it in the jaw, and then they go up and then they eat that animal. So those small birds are called raptors. Like pigeons, etc. are also birds. They're not raptors. You don't see a pigeon coming down, hunting a small animal, then going up. No. Those birds that can actually hunt small animals, kill them, and then eat them, consume them, those are called raptors, eagles, etc. So these are called Amur falcons. As I said, they breed in southeastern parts of Siberia and northern China. Then they come towards India, and then they fly over the Arabian Sea, and they go towards South Africa. Apart from South Africa, they're also seen in Somalia and Kenya as well, covering a huge distance of about 20,000 kilometers. Now, there are a few very important facts about Amur falcon, which I expect all of you to remember. First, as I said, they are the world's longest traveling raptors, 20,000 kilometers in a year. They start from Siberia and northern China because of very tough climatic conditions. In Siberia, I don't know if you know this or not, in the winters, the temperature can actually go to minus 50 degrees Celsius. Minus 50 degrees Celsius, or even beyond that. So it's very difficult to survive in those conditions. So they make a move towards warmer weather, and when the weather changes, they again go back to the same route. Now, one of the problems that we saw with these kind of migratory birds is that whenever they actually go from one place to the other place, because they are seen as exotic birds. Exotic means when people see them, they're like, oh, such a beautiful bird, they're coming from outside. Many of them are actually hunted. In Nagaland also, we saw that if you go back a few years, there was a tradition that many of these birds were hunted. Now, when you hunt these kind of species, the problem is these are very smart, very intelligent species. So it's not that when you hunt them, not that intelligent that they will come and then they will basically come and take revenge. That's not what I'm saying. When you actually hunt them, they learn that this is a dangerous place for them, and then they avoid coming to that place. As simple as that. So this is where you have to be very careful as a government authority. If you're trying to attract any species and if you're hoping that they will come to your place and you can actually use it as a tourist attraction, you will actually have to give them a lot of protection. So Amur falcons also earlier were hunted in large numbers in Nagaland, but recently what has happened is the government of India, but more credit should go to government of Nagaland and the local authority of Nagaland. The local people, the local community have actually taken up the responsibility amongst themselves that first we will not hunt it, and we will not allow anyone to harm or hunt these kind of birds that are actually coming in. Now, the reason why they are called Amur falcons is that they got this name Amur from a river that flows between Russia and China. Also, in Nagaland, also there is a specific place called the Doyang Lake in Nagaland, which is known as the major stopover destination for the Amur falcons. That is why Nagaland is very famous as the falcon capital of the world. Now, they are not endangered or something. They are present in very, very good numbers. If you see the IUCN, they are in the least concerned category in the IUCN Red List. But in India specifically, in order to protect them, in order to make sure that India remains a hub for these migratory species, we have placed them in the Wildlife Protection Act, and also they are a part of Convention on Migratory Species. What is this? CMS, Convention on Migratory Species. Convention on Migratory Species, very simple terms, is an international convention under which it is a responsibility of the host country. So, for example, for Amur falcons, India will be a host country where the birds are coming in or any migratory species are coming in. So if any migratory species coming into your country, it is your responsibility to protect them, to safeguard them. So in that way, India is a part of Convention on Migratory Species, and that is why India also has to protect them, and India has been taking action, has been taking multiple steps to actually protect them as well. Perfect. Let's now see if you can actually answer this question. Read this carefully and then we'll go ahead. Have you read this? Our time has started. Okay, 74% people got this right. This is D. All the three given statements are correct. Pretty easy question. We just discussed all these statements. Now, I have a few questions. There is one question that I have. It's an interesting question. Out of many nations, why are Amur falcons coming only to Nagaland? If there is any specialty, is there any specialty in Nagaland? I would not say so. See, if you go towards the path that they are taking from Siberia and northern China, if they are actually coming towards the south, the next major country that you will see where the climatic conditions are not that harsh. You'll go to Tibet, again part of China, the climatic conditions are very harsh. So the climatic conditions where you will actually see them being comfortable would have to be India. Now in India, why Nagaland? I can't give you a reason, neither other people can give you a reason. But these are things that whenever you see why animal species are coming to one specific place, that usually depends on the kind of treatment those species were given in different places. For example, it's not something that started just today. It would have been going on for many decades, many centuries. So what scientists say it might have happened that maybe they would have stopped over at other places, let's say in China, but they were hunted there. So obviously they had to change it. So they usually see which are the places where the weather is good, which are the places where the people are more receptive, which are the places where they can find food also. Because again, these are birds that have to kill smaller animals, they have to take them from the ground. So they have to see which are the places where all these conditions are met. And then maybe they chose Nagaland because they thought that this is the most perfect place for them. I can't speak for them, but these are the reasons that scientists give. That why is it that animals, birds, etc. choose certain specific places that we can actually land here so that we can spend more time here specifically. Okay. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Okay. Now comes the time to actually move towards the last topic for this webinar that we have. One topic that has remained in the news in the past 10 days or 2 weeks or so, that is a DMH11 variety of mustard. DMH here stands for Dhara Mustard Hybrid. Now, as all of you would have read in the news, I'm very sure, what has happened, why is it in the news, is that the government of India's GEAC. What is GEAC? GEAC is, let me write it down, Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee. Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee. Now, this is a committee that works under the Ministry of Environment. What has happened is they have given an environmental clearance from their side. They are saying that we are fine and we are allowing it to have commercially cultivated in India. Now, they have said that commercial cultivation can now start. Now, ideally, what happens is the next step is that the cabinet has to now give permission. So it is not that because the GEAC has said, so now it will now start to actually be cultivated across the country. No, that is not how it works. The next step has to be with the cabinet. The interesting part is, even in the past, if you go back a few years, GEAC earlier also had given approval to this GM variety of mustard. But after a lot of protests broke out for various reasons, the government of India decided to actually go back, and cabinet said that no, we are not going ahead with this. Now, after many years, once again, GEAC has said it is time for us to actually go ahead and try out commercial cultivation of GM mustard. So now we have to see whether or not cabinet actually supports this decision or not. Now, if you look at GM crop, that is genetically modified crops, and you see India's track record, you will see that yes, there are a lot of talks about GM crops, lot of discussion, but the fact is, if you look at India, the only GM crop that is allowed in India even today is only one, that is BT cotton. BT cotton is the only GM crop that we have in India that is allowed. The others, we had talked about that, we had discussed about that. Government also tried to see if we can go ahead with that or not. But in the end, none of the other ones were given the go ahead, and it is only BT cotton. Now, there are other reasons for that. There was BT brinjal we were talking about. Then there were other global variants that are present, maize, soybean, etc. But India did not get that. Now, those who don't know GM means genetically modified. That is, if you genetically modify cotton to make it better, to make it pest resistant, so that the pest cannot control cotton. Now, the only one that is allowed in India is BT cotton. Why? There are reasons for that. BT here stands for Bacillus thuringiensis. As you know, it is a soil bacteria. It is actually used in the cotton seed, which makes the cotton resistant to the pest pink bollworm. So what happens is, if you use the seed of BT cotton, the cotton plant that will come up, it will not be attacked by the pest, because if the pest eats it, pest itself will die. So the other pests learn the lesson and they don't eat it. That is why BT cotton has been allowed. Now, if you look at the past record, you will see that for BT cotton, ever since it has been used in India, it has actually given great results, meaning that the production of cotton has increased in India ever since the BT cotton was introduced. Mainly because the BT cotton, as we discussed, is not affected by the pest. So the production part earlier that was going waste because of the pest, now it is not going waste. So that is the good part. On the other hand, the reason why we actually have BT cotton allowed in India, we have not allowed brinjal, we have not allowed others, etc. The reason being that cotton is not something that you eat, right? Cotton is not something that we actually consume. We wear it. So allowing BT cotton for the government was a safer option. It was an option where the government was not taking a lot of risk. It was a non-risky option, I would say. Because let's say even if something wrong happens, if there is a negative impact or if there is a negative reaction, it would not have that kind of an impact as compared to something that you are eating. So whenever it comes to crops, something that you eat, Indian government has not been comfortable with it. So GM mustard will now be the first ever crop to be given this certification. If you look at India's history, you will see whenever you talk about any new scientific development, like GM crops, etc., these new varieties, Indian governments, irrespective of whichever party is in power, Indian governments have not been very, very forward with giving these kind of permissions. Because in India, we see whenever the government tries to give permission for any of these things, a lot of protests start to happen on different varieties. We have different groups protesting that no, this should not be allowed because it is against our interest, etc. As a result of it, the government usually takes a step back. That is why we have seen in case of this mustard crop also, even though the government was given a go-ahead by GEAC earlier as well, the government did not really go ahead with that. Even this time, there are protests from a lot of different groups, and we'll discuss about those protests as well. Globally, if you look at other nations, there are nations that are allowing other crops as well. Even if you look at Bangladesh, our neighbor, in Bangladesh also there are multiple varieties of GM crops that are allowed, but India has not been very confident of actually taking that call. So we have been very, very circumspect. Now, there are two very important topics from this entire thing that you need to remember. One, the GEAC. What is GEAC? As I told you, GEAC stands for Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee. It's a committee that works under Ministry of Environment, and their responsibility is to ensure that whatever different types of new food crops, etc., are the ones that are actually being cultivated in India. All of them are safe. All of them are safe to be consumed. Nothing is going against the entire general population of the country. That is why the GEAC here plays a very, very important role. It is chaired by a special secretary or additional secretary who works on the Ministry of Environment itself. As I said earlier, their decision is not the final decision. So just because they have given a go-ahead for DMH mustard doesn't mean that it will actually go ahead and it will start to get produced in India. It depends on the cabinet whether they will give the final go-ahead or not. Now, before I actually come here, practice question, I actually want to discuss a bit more about the GM mustard crop. Please understand this. The reason why GM mustard is a very, very, very important discovery. I'll tell you why. There are various reasons for that. Number one, it is completely Indian technology. So it is actually made by researchers in Delhi University. It is made by researchers in Delhi University, number one. Secondly, out of all the crops that you see, actually having a variety of mustard which is hybrid was the most difficult. Please try and understand. See, when you say that you are actually producing a GM crop, a genetically modified crop, what usually happens, just like in animals, like male and female, they actually come together to reproduce a new offspring. Right? In animals, this is how it works, right? Male and female come together, reproduce a new offspring. In plants also, when you have to make a new species, the same thing happens. So in plants also, you have to take a male reproductive organ, female reproductive organ, and they consume it, and that is how a new species is born. The problem with mustard is very different. The problem with mustard is a crop that has both male and female reproductive organs. Mustard has both male and female reproductive organs. So what happened was, mustard used to self-reproduce itself. It had the female organ, it had the male organ. So it did not wait for any external cross-pollination to happen. They were actually self-pollinating because they had male and both female reproductive parts. This is where it was very, very difficult for mustard, especially for the scientists to actually go ahead. Now, what scientists did was they first had to stop the mustard plant from reproducing itself. They had to sterilize it. And then they had to basically bring in an outside element so that they can actually cross breed. That is why it was very, very difficult. For this, there were two external bacterium that were used. That was called the Barnase. And apart from that, there was Barstar. So Barnase and Barstar were the ones that were used, with the help of which the mustard crop was first sterilized and then it was actually crossbred from outside. This is why it's such an amazing discovery and it has to be appreciated. See, when we have these kind of discoveries, which is not even appreciated within the country, then you do not really see a scope of other countries adopting this. When you say, why is it that we don't have groundbreaking discoveries in India? This is the reason. If we now have a groundbreaking discovery in India, ideally it should be first adopted, celebrated in India itself so that it can actually go outside. One other very important point here I have to mention. See, whenever we talk about the Indian government's expenses, we say that the government of India spends billions and billions of dollars in importing crude oil, which is correct. We spend crores and crores and crores of rupees to import crude oil because we have a lot of consumption. What we forget is India also has huge production of edible oil as well. India also has huge production of edible oil as well. Because if you look at how Indian food is cooked, we have a lot of demand for edible oil. So we import huge amounts of edible oil from nations across the world. Now, with this variety of mustard, it is expected, the scientists are saying that its production of mustard will improve by at least 25 to 30%. So production will improve by 25 to 30% at least, because of which our import bill of edible oil can come down drastically. This is why it is so important. This is why it is so important, and that is why we actually have to appreciate this particular discovery. Now, why is it that the people are protesting against it? See, one group of people who are protesting against it are saying that GM crops, and whenever you try to change the entire genetic structure of a crop, you are going against the nature. So you might have a negative impact. The scientists are saying that if you look at GM crops, yes, it is not an old technology, it is a new technology. We agree to this. But you see so many nations across the world are using GM crops right now, meaning that trillions, not even billions, trillions of meals have been eaten which had GM crops. So many people around the world live in different nations. Every single day they are eating food. In some food or the other, there is GM crop in other nations. So if we would have had a negative reaction, we would have known by now. So far, we have not had any news of any negative reaction of the GM crops. So yes, it's a new technology, but we have had so many meals that people have eaten. There is no negative reaction that has come out, number one, that we have to remember. Second thing, the people who are protesting against it in India are saying that no, there is one more problem. The bees will not like it. Now, what is the bees got to do with it? Now, I don't know if you know this or not. Scientists and all the intelligent people around the world agree, if tomorrow the bees become extinct, the human civilization will end. I don't know if you know this or not. This is the fact. If bees become extinct, the entire human civilization will end. Do you know this? Why? What do the bees do? They actually, whenever they are in a plant, whenever they are sucking out juice from a plant, they actually take those small seeds from the plant in their mouth and they just spread it across. They throw it away, throw it in some other plant, or maybe throw in some land or somewhere. So basically, it is because of bees which act as the agent of pollination. If we don't have bees, we will have a situation where the entire plantation cover that we have around the world will start to evaporate very, very quickly. Now, the people, and this is just an assumption, this is not proven, people against the GM crops are saying, maybe with GM mustard, what if bees think that no, this is something artificial, we should not come here? That will be very, very catastrophic for the entire world. But again, no proof of this has been found anywhere across the world, because GM mustard is not the first crop that will take this route. So we should not fear that we will actually have such a catastrophic situation. This is what the supporters of this are actually saying. So again, I gave you arguments on both sides. People who are against it are saying that it might harm in the long run because you're consuming it. Bees might not like it, but the people who are support saying that no, this is an Indian technology, it should be supported. Perfect. Let me quickly take up a couple of questions and then we can end the class. There's a question: if Nagaland is the falcon capital of the world, why does Assam host the falcon festival? There is no restriction on who can host the falcon festival. Tomorrow I can host the falcon party in my home and I can invite you. You can come. I'll put posters of falcon bird. So there is no there is no restriction on who can hold the falcon festival, right? See, I'll tell you in all seriousness, what happens is, let's assume I'm a tourist. I want to see the falcons, etc. Many people have this conception that going to Nagaland is not, I don't want to go there. Many people have many misconceptions. I have friends who went to Nagaland, they loved the place. But many people think, okay, I'll go to Assam, but I'm not going to go to Nagaland. So maybe for them, Assam organizes this festival, but there's no logic. Why can't they have this festival? Let them have it. I can also have any festival. For example, I don't know if you know this or not. After this Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara movie came in and they told Indians about the La Tomatina festival of Spain. I don't know if you know this or not. Many Indian cities also started celebrating this La Tomatina festival where they were throwing tomatoes at each other. Doesn't make any logic, but anyone can do this. So nothing stops them. Okay, I'll take one more question. What was problem with existing mustard crop? Why do we need genetically modified crop? Why can't we increase production with the existing ones? See, again, it has to be any seed that you are using. There's a limit to how much production you can have. Also, the existing mustard crop was susceptible to certain pests, etc. So it is assumed that the new seed that we have will have better production. Now, it depends on seed to seed. You can't say why is it that the original mustard crop, their seed was giving us lower yield. It all depends on the seed and what is the makeup of that seed. Then I have a question, but what is the requirement of GM mustard when it reproduces the offspring and grows? Again, the entire problem is that there's no problem with GM, with original mustard. Let's understand that part. There's no problem with that. Just that we want a better variety of seed which can give us higher production. So if old mustard, for example, let's say in 1 hectare of land, old mustard will give you 100 kg production. The new mustard in same land will give you 130 kg production. So why would you not want this? Simple as that. Then I have a question. Does packet of oil mention that the oil is made from GM mustard? Good question. When it will go on, then it will mention, because now the government has actually made this law that whichever is using GM crops, they have to mention this. So far, GM mustard has not been used in India. So once you come up with mustard oil, then it will have mentioned, but so far it has not come here. Then I have a question. Then the cases will not be shifted to constitutional benches if single judge bench gives a verdict on any constitutional case. See, you are misunderstanding. No constitutional case is given to a single bench anyway. Constitutional cases are given to a constitutional bench only, which is a 5-judge bench. If there is a case which is being heard by a smaller bench, in that discussion, a constitutional question comes up. Then it will go to constitutional bench, obviously. But it's not that constitutional cases are heard by a smaller bench anyway. Constitutional cases are heard by constitutional benches only. If other case is going on, heard by 2 judges in the Supreme Court, a question comes up which requires constitutional interpretation, then the constitutional bench will be referred. Simple as that. Perfect. Thank you so much for watching. This was our webinar for Tuesday. I hope all of you are attending these webinars Tuesday, Thursday, 8:30 to 10:30 to cover all your current affairs. All the very best for your upcoming mock test. I hope all of you perform very, very well. In case you don't, remember, you are learning something new. You are not taking away anything from your knowledge. So even if you see a new question, be happy about that. Try and see as many new questions as possible before the prelims examination. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Good night. Jai Hind.